Halton Council Transportation Committee for November 28th, 2022. Our first order of business tonight is approval of the agenda. If there are no changes or additions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. The next is approval of the November 14th, 2022 Transportation Committee meetings. Did anyone have changes or additions? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the minutes are adopted. Next, we're on to employee recognition, so I'm going to turn it over to General Manager Cloister.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Today we're pleased to honor several employees. This includes 3 community service officers who are being recognized for their life-saving efforts and 3 members of our bus transportation team who were recently honored by the Minnesota Public Transportation Association. While this group of CSOs is being commended for a particular response, I want to take this opportunity to also acknowledge the work that the CSOs are doing every day to help us create a safer and more welcoming transit environment. Today, we have more than a dozen CSOs who regularly ride transit, perform other tasks. This is a change from when CSOs primarily performed administrative functions, and it's a good change and one that really helps with the presence on our system. We'd love to have many more of them, and we hope that by sharing this story, it'll help us illustrate what the job really is and attract others to follow in their footsteps. On the bus transportation side, I just want to add that all 3 of these employees who are being recognized have been critical to our ongoing recruitment efforts. One providing an example of what a rewarding career as a bus operator looks like, and the others welcoming the newest hires in their roles in the instruction center. With that, I'll hand things off first to Chief Grates for the CSO recognitions, and then to Puntsak Dunup, Assistant Transportation Manager of South Garage, and Jonathan Braun, Assistant Director of Bus Transportation, to provide the introductions to the operations recognitions. So, Chief.
Good afternoon, everybody. I first want to piggy off a little bit what the general manager talked about our CSOs. The first thing I want to say is I believe we're in our 15th year of this program. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but I recall the first few CSOs that came in, and kind of the cool thing about this program is we have CSOs that are now street supervisors. They're sergeants out there working. We do have at least one right now in the sergeant's process. So that investment is well paid off, and we hope we continue with that. So without further ado, Madam Chair and members of the committee, today I'm proud to introduce 3 of our community service officers, Charles, Nicholas, and Colin, who are being recognized for their recent life-saving efforts. Before we tell that story, I wanted to briefly introduce each of these CSOs to you. CSO Charles Jack is a sophomore majoring in criminal justice at Hamline University. He joined us in 2022 and is from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, where he lives with his parents, Rich and Angie, and has an older brother, Noah. CSO Nicholas Tracy is a student at Normandale Community College, where he's pursuing a law enforcement degree. Nicholas came to Metro Transit after 5 years at the United States Army Military Police Corps, and during this time in the Army, he served in the Middle East and South Korea. He is now also a member of the National Guard, supporting disaster relief efforts. And CSO Colin Benson is a student at Hennepin Technical College, where he is completing a theory and skills program. Before coming to Metro Transit, he served as a security officer at the Mall of America. In October, officers were dispatched to a welfare check at the 50th Street Light Rail Station, where mail was reportedly down. Riding the Blue Line and already in the area, these CSOs disembarked at the station to assist with the call. Within a few minutes of their arrival, the CSOs discovered that the male was unconscious and not breathing. CSO Benson aired out the vital information, which allowed officers, paramedics, and firefighters to respond to assist. When Metro Transit Police arrived, the CSOs had already started CPR and were airing updates to dispatch so arriving officers would have a coordinated response. After several minutes, Minneapolis firefighters arrived and took over CPR. Before the individual was transported, a pulse was regained. An ER doctor later advised that because of the work and the CSO's response, the male's life was saved. the mail is alive today because of the quick actions of these CSOs, and they bring great credit upon themselves and the Metro Transit Police Department, Metropolitan Council, and Metro Transit. And I thank them for their work.
Colin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Charles. Thank you. And thank you for what you do. Thank you for your help. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Madam Chair, next I think we believe is Puntsak Dunlap. Puntsak, I hope I pronounced the name correctly.
That's correct. Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the committee. Today I'm here to present Mr. Dwayne Moore. He's currently working as Assistant Transportation Manager at South Garage under the Leadership Academy program. In October 2022, he was awarded Minnesota Operator of the Year by Minnesota Transportation Association. He was presented this award for his 30 years of safe driving and many other contributions he has made to transit in the Twin Cities, including nearly 5 years as a relief instructor. He's always professional. I enjoyed working with him. I wish him the best in future. Dwayne Moore.
You want to say?
Sure. I don't know, did you say, well, I've been around for 30, almost 33 years. I have a good customer service track record. I've recognized a lot of faces here that I've worked with several people. And so with that, a lot's been going on lately. I've been doing a lot of studying and trying to move forward. And I'm just happy to work here at Metro Transit. This is a great place to work. Metro Transit has done a lot. I've seen a lot of changes, and we are working towards great things. And this is absolutely a wonderful place to be as I look around the room. And with that, thank you for having me. I was going to join the military, but that didn't happen. That didn't turn out. I came here I'm from Georgia, and when I left at a young age and came here at age 26. And when I got here, I just ended up coming to Metro Transit, and it's been great ever since. And I'm looking forward to giving quite a few more years to Metro Transit, because I see a lot of great things going on here. And it's a good thing to see as I look around the room. And I just want to say congratulations to the other award recipients. Congratulations to you, and thank you again.
Thank you. And I got the great privilege of taking a ride to the employee recognition event with Dwayne from South Garage. So he truly is as kind and humble as they come. So thank you very much. Thank you. So thanks.
Madam Chair, Donathan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and council members. Thank you for having us today. I'd like to introduce Daniel Stoffer, the manager of the Instruction Center, and Jabita Ogama, the assistant manager of the Instruction Center. Both of them worked diligently on incorporating ELDT, entry-level driver's training, into our CDL process. It's a requirement of federal change in the law that required us to train even bus operators on all types of vehicles, including semis and other types of trucks, get the basic knowledge so that that CDL can be transferable anywhere. So Dan and Javita worked with a group of other agencies in Minnesota to incorporate this training. They did so well that they received an award, the MIPTA's Manager's Innovation Award. And the training that they developed is now being used by RTAP and throughout the state and the nation. So thank you very much, Dan and Javita.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. It's very nice that we're back doing this, and I really want to thank everyone for their contributions. It shows a wide array of all the different things that we do here, so just thank you again. Next, we'll move on to some of our reports, and first I'm going to turn it to MTS Director Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, brief report tonight. Motor vehicle sales tax receipts for October of 2022 are reported. So the council received about $30 million of MVEST receipts. That brings us to $308 million year to date versus a forecast of 297. So that's 104% of forecast, more or less, which is good. There's a new state economic forecast in development, and it should be released in the next couple weeks, and so I'm sure we'll be reporting on that as it becomes known, as it guides us into the new year. So our bigger news is on the non-consent agenda, so I'll end my report there, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Charles. Any questions or comments from council members? To General Manager Cloister.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. To start with, I want to remind you that D-Line starts service this Saturday, December 3rd. This Wednesday at the council meeting, staff will provide an information item on the D-Line. This presentation will include information about the grand opening festivities, and then council members should have received an invitation to attend the ribbon cutting ceremony at the Mall of America Center at 10 a.m. Saturday morning. If you haven't, let me know. Send me an email. I'll make sure you get that invitation, but I think the invitations got out, and we hope you can join us. We really do. It's a big event. It's a wonderful opening, and we're excited about D-Line service that will serve the busiest transit corridor we have, and we're excited to get that started. The other thing I want to mention is that Saturday is also the day that the December PIC goes into effect. These service changes represent about an 8% reduction from current service levels, which we need to maintain service reliability in the face of our ongoing operator shortage. And as I say, each time we've had to announce a reduction, it's frustrating to us because it's a time that we want to be expanding service as travel is increasing. And we know the cuts that go into effect Saturday have a very real impact on our riders. We have been hearing from people who are negatively affected by these changes, and I imagine some of you have heard from them as well. I want you to know that in the coming weeks, we are going to talk with you more about a project that we are getting started that we are calling Network Now. And Network Now will be the process for developing a plan that will guide our approach to investing in our transit services as resources become available. Right now, operators are our scarcest resource, but we're hopeful that higher wages and all the effort we're putting into recruitment will help turn that around. I mentioned that November was a very good, we had 2 very good recruitment events. We're hoping that's a signal of a turnaround. One data point doesn't make a trend. We're not sure that December will be telling because it's around the holidays, but we'll be looking closely at December and January events and February events to see if we're making the progress that we hopefully started in November. But Network Next will be an opportunity to engage with customers and communities about the current state of our network due to the cuts we've made since March 2020. And we will be asking people to weigh in on our framework for making service decisions that will inform how we prioritize bringing service back. So it's really an opportunity to look at what's changed since since 2019, what's changed during the pandemic. We've had to make service reductions. There's an opportunity, not one that we asked for, but one that we have at looking at how best to bring services back and what principles and what values we should be using in doing that. And we need to be communicating with our customers and our communities in making those determinations. So we're going to start talking about the project in the coming days, and I just wanted to make you aware of it tonight, that we're starting with community engagement, and really it's important for us to understand how to bring service back, not and when we're very thoughtful about how to reduce service and trying to impact the fewest amount of individuals. But now it's time to think about, we're hopeful it's time to be thinking about what principles we should apply in returning service. So with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Wes. Questions or comments from council members? All right. Next is our tab liaison. I think Peter, Mr. Dan is here. Did you have any opening comments, or are you going to?
Just a few of Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and honorable committee members. And I do want to recognize, I see all these great folks from Metro Transit in the audience, Mr. Quastra. I don't know who's running the shop. We've got Mr. Paul here, Mr. Fung, Deputy Director Thompson. I mean, there's all kinds of people here. Just one comment. I've been asked to restrict my comments or follow up with Steve Peterson's report on the approval of the Regional Solicitation Carbon Reduction Program and the HSIP funds, so I will do that. But one addition to the MAC report is approximately 32 to 35,000 folks went through the TSA gates during the day before Thanksgiving. So I don't think official numbers are out yet, but that's what I've been told. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Peter. Tonight, we don't have any items on consent, so we're going to head straight to our non-consent business. The first is business item 2022-280, which is a 2022 operating budget amendment, and we have Ed Petrie and Heather Giesel here. Oh, no. That's fine.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. Ed Petrie, Metro Transit Finance.
And I'm Nick Hendrickson, the Finance Manager for MTS.
Sorry, apologize. I just looked down and read, so.
Not a problem. Okay, we're here this evening to present the fourth quarter budget amendments. It's just an operating budget amendment for Metro Transit and Metropolitan Transportation Services. I'll go through the piece for Metro Transit first, answer any questions, then hand it over to Nick for MTS. Okay, the piece for the amendment for Metro Transit programs additional federal funds into light rail and commuter rail operations. We're bringing in approximately $5.7 million of federal relief funds into light rail and about $172,000 into the commuter rail operations. If you recall, when we originally received the federal relief funds, we were using these to offset operating expenses due to COVID, payroll expenses, those types of items, and then additional passenger fare revenue losses. That is how we have been spending the funding up to this point in time. With this amendment this evening, there are two factors that are mainly causing the amendment for Metro Transit. The first one is with passenger fares. We are watching passengers and ridership on the light rail system. Light rail ridership is about 10% below budget right now year to date. So that the decrease in ridership, we're bringing in the federal funds to offset that in concert with what our discussion was with the use of the federal funds. The second item is consistent with our 2023 operating budget. When we originally presented the 2023 operating budget, we made the comment, or we discussed with you, that we had discussed with the counties the proposal of reopening the Master Operating Funding Agreement, or the MOFA. Because as of that point in time, the counties were not paying 50% of the operations due to increased costs. We talked to the counties about that, and I believe the general manager also talked about this at the last meeting. The counties were unwilling to open the MOFA to recognize additional costs. So as a result, we used additional federal funds in the proposed 2023 budget to offset that reduction in the county contribution. We looked at also the 2022 budget. The 2022 budget, right now, the state was contributing approximately 53% on the blue line, and the county contributing 47% on the blue. State was contributing 51% on the green and 49% by the counties. So the other piece of this proposal in this evening is then to match the state's contribution with the county contribution, and at the 47% and that 49%, with the balance then being covered by the federal relief funds. This is consistent with our previous discussions, also consistent with the 2023 operating budget. So with that, Madam Chair, committee members, I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ed. Questions or comments? All right, no, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to you, Nick.
All right, for the MTS operating portion of this amendment is requesting to increase contracted services fixed route expense authority by 1.8 million and increase the use of reserves by 1.8 million. So we've actually seen an increase to our provider expense due to higher diesel fuel prices than we had budgeted, and our service provider expense has been higher due to recent contract rate increases that have been implemented to help retain drivers. So our requested action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the 2022 unified budget as indicated and in accordance with the attached tables. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-280, a joint same week item.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next, we're on to business item 2022-277, a same week item. It's the Metro Beeline Station Shelter Contract Option, and we have Frank Alarcon.
Good evening, Chair Barber, committee members. I'm Frank Alarcon, project manager in the arterial BRT department at Metro Transit. Business item 2022-277 is for procurement of shelters for the Metro Beeline through the council's existing 5-year shelter contract. This procurement complements the Beeline's pylon purchase that was presented to the Transportation Committee back on October 24th. Today's proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to exercise an option on existing contract 19P385B with DuoGuard Industries for the fabrication and delivery of 43 BRT shelters for installation on the Metro Beeline project in an amount not to exceed $1,460,070. Staff are requesting a same week council action to help ensure timely fabrication and delivery of the shelters. Arterial BRT shelters feature a signature shelter to provide a customer, a high-quality customer experience. They provide lighting, heating, and protection from the elements. They're also equipped with security cameras and emergency telephones to contribute to a safe waiting environment for customers. This purchase would make use of the council's existing shelter contract to obtain the shelters needed for all stations along the Beeline. This contract was competitively procured and executed last year in 2021. Similar to how the council procures buses, the contract was structured with an initial base order plus the option to purchase additional shelters within a 5-year window. OEEO set a DBE goal of 9% on that original contract, shelter contract. At the time of award, OEEO determined that the awarded vendor met the DBE requirements for the contract. And for this current proposed option, OEEO determined similarly that the vendor continues to meet the DBE requirements for the contract. So in closing, business item 2022-277 requests that the council authorize the regional administrator to exercise an option on existing contract 19P385B with DuoGuard Industries, Inc. for the fabrication and delivery of 43 bus rapid transit shelters for installation on the Beeline project in an amount not to exceed $1,460,070. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Frank. Are there questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-277, a same week item.
I'll make a motion to approve the item.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. And I am turning it back over to Frank for business item 2022-312.
Thank you again, Chair Barber and committee members. Business item 2022-312 is to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute an agreement with Hennepin County to receive Hennepin County funds to construct county-requested improvements along Lake Street as part of Beeline construction. And I have a few slides to share about this important partnership with Hennepin County. So just to jog memories, the Beeline is will substantially replace the Route 21, which is the region's second highest bus route serving the Lake Street, Marshall Avenue, and Selby Avenue corridor in both Minneapolis and St. Paul. The B line is a fully funded project with construction anticipated to start in 2023 and service anticipated to begin toward the end of 2024. So the B line will be constructed in two packages, east and west. East package will come first in 2023. So this image shows kind of the dividing line between the two packages, which is Hiawatha Avenue. So as you can see, the stations between Hiawatha Avenue and the edge of downtown St. Paul will be constructed in 2023, and the rest in the west construction package in 2024. And this packaging approach is important for understanding the agreement that's before the committee today. I will say that this agreement just concerns the portion of the B line that is within Hennepin County, which doesn't line up perfectly with our packaging approach. So there's a portion of the east packages in Hennepin County, of course the part west of the Mississippi River, and then the entirety of the west package is within Hennepin County. So just a few comments on our really important partnership with Hennepin County on the B line. And this was brought to Transportation Committee back in April as part of a corridor plan amendment for the B line. But there has been progress on this front since then. So Lake Street is a Hennepin County road, making Hennepin County a really critical stakeholder on the B line project. And Hennepin County, in partnership with the city and with us, identified a number of goals for the corridor, specifically improving transit speed and reliability, reducing crashes, and addressing pedestrian safety along Lake Street. And one of the ways that Hennepin County is working to achieve these goals is by identifying local scope to be delivered as part of the B line project that will complement the B line by improving safety, improving transit speed and reliability along the corridor. Hennepin County has also been working very diligently to secure funding to make these complementary improvements along the B line corridor. And so far they've secured federal funding in the amount of approximately $20 million, which is applications that Metro Transit as well as partners at the city of Minneapolis have been very supportive of. And as I'm sure most of you know, one of these grants even brought Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to town this summer. So just to summarize the improvements, the county requested improvements that will be constructed first as part of that east package in 2023. They consist generally of resurfacing of Lake Street. So this will provide a smooth surface for opening day of B line, which is really great. The resurfacing provides an opportunity to do some lane restriping to improve safety as well as improve transit reliability. So the general roadway will go from a 4-lane to a 3-lane configuration in this stretch of Lake Street between Hiawatha Avenue and the river. And that 4 to 3-lane conversion provides an opportunity to implement a bus lane. And based on analysis and existing data, it was determined that the westbound direction provides the most transit benefit. So as part of this lane restriping, there will also be a westbound bus lane. In addition to the restriping and the resurfacing, there will be a number of spot improvements at intersections along the corridor. So 10 intersections that won't have BRT stations will get some upgrades such as curb extensions, signal improvements to make those intersections safer. And there will also be some complementary improvements at stations where there will be at intersections where there will be BRT stations. And just to provide a kind of a representative intersection to give you a sense of what these improvements will look like. So this is Lake and 36th Avenue. It is an intersection where there will be a B line station. As you can see, there's a proposed B line station in the southeast and the northwest quadrants of this intersection. But then in the opposite quadrants, the northeast and the southwest, there are county requested improvements that really complement the B line. So curb extensions to make the pedestrian crossing distance shorter in that location. This image also highlights the 4 to 3 lane conversion for general traffic, as well as that westbound bus lane, which will provide speed and reliability benefits along the corridor. So just to kind of highlight some of the key features of Agreement 22I-046. So this agreement will do a number of things. One, it's proposed to allow Metro Transit to receive construction funds from Hennepin County to construct the county requested scope in the East construction package, which I just described. And we'll be coming forward to Transportation Committee next year with a proposed construction contract. The agreement will also allow Metro Transit to receive funds for design of additional Hennepin County improvements in the west construction package west of Hiawatha Avenue. So Hennepin County has done a little bit of preliminary design in that part of the corridor. And with these funds, we'll be able to finalize that design and get those additional improvements in the west package ready for construction. This agreement will also allow Metro Transit to obtain access to county-owned easements and property necessary to be able to construct the B-line, and will also allow Metro Transit to exercise right-of-way management powers needed for construction. Most importantly, the ability to relocate utilities if necessary. And those are very similar powers to those considered in recent joint powers agreements for the B-line with St. Paul and with Ramsey County. So just one more comment. Not covered in Agreement 22I-046 for now is bringing in Hennepin County construction dollars for their improvement, the county requested improvements in the west package. We're just not quite ready for that, but we do expect to come back to Transportation Committee next year for an agreement that will bring those county dollars into the B-line project for the county requested improvements in the west package. So to conclude, business item 2022-312 requests that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute Agreement 22I-046 with Hennepin County to receive approximately $9 million of funds for county requested improvements along the Metro B-line corridor and for right-of-way management authority needed for construction of the B-line project. And again, I'm happy to take any questions.
Very good, thank you. Additional or questions, comments from council members? All right. I will just say I'm very excited about this project, as I say all the time. I think this is really a significant connector. It really pulls things together from the east side to the west side, as I know my fellow council members over there nodding and knows how important this project is. But it does kind of bring everything so you can really connect throughout the transit system. So I'm excited for it. If there aren't any questions, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-312.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second?
There, no second?
Second by Councilmember Zarin. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you.
Now we're on to business item 2022-307. It's a Southwest LRT Braun Intertec Corporation Contract Amendment, and we have Jim Alexander.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Jim Alexander, Project Director for the Green Line Extension. So tonight I have an amendment to a contract with Braun. They are helping us with the quality assurance on the civil portion of the project. We originally awarded a contract to Braun back in 2018 for just over $36 million, and we've added to that $7.8 million earlier this year, and we need to do another lift for this coming year for the work we have foreseen for 23 in the amount of 10.4. Braun has currently DBE participation just under 19%. The goal is set at 15%, so they're doing pretty well. We anticipate that to continue. Just advise that the consultant environment is a very hot commodity out there, and with all the work going on, it's difficult to find folks. So we're lucky to have this team continue on this project. So the proposal tonight is to amend the contract for $10.4 million to a total amount not to exceed $54.2 million. So, Madam Chair, I'll be asked for authorization for the regional administrator to negotiate and execute this amendment.
Thank you, Jim. Questions or comments from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-307.
make a motion to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Now we're on to business item 2022-316, which is also Southwest LRT 1. So I'll turn it back to Jim. And I see with Jody Jacoby joining us as well.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Jody's going to join me for this item here. This relates to an emergency declaration that the council actually ratified last year about this time in December for originally $220,000. This relates to a repair that needed to be done for the city of Minneapolis. They own a maintenance facility called the Curry Maintenance Facility in the Glenwood area in Minneapolis, and some damage occurred to an exterior wall and a connection to the roof when the contractor was doing work nearby, and so most of that work got completed up till earlier this fall, where we needed to complete some roof repairs to the addition of $19,000 to add to a total of $239,209 for the full emergency declaration. So Jody can speak to the re-ratification, because this is kind of an unusual application here.
Thank you, Jim. Madam Chair, committee members, my name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the Director of the Procurement Department. As Jim said, this was brought to you as it exceeds the council's threshold for formal advertisement at $175,000 last year in December. What an emergency declaration does is it allows the council to move forward swiftly with a contract, not having a competitive process to cure the issue because it threatens the health, the safety, and the welfare of the general public. And so this was brought forward to you last December in an amount expected at $220,000. And as the work progressed, there was more materials and services needed than anticipated. The work was completed this October, and the final invoice was more than what you originally approved with that emergency declaration ratification. And so the policy states that it needs to be brought back to the committee to re-ratify for the full contract amount. And so that's why we're back here today, to bring back for full transparency the full amount of this contract pursuant to the emergency declaration that was approved last year.
All right. Questions or comments from council members? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-316.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Fredson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? Seeing, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now the next three, we're welcoming Steve Peterson to present business item 2022-319, 320, and 321, which has to do with the Regional Solicitation Funding Program, the Carbon Reduction Funding Program, and the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So, welcome, Steve.
It's a mouthful right there.
It is.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So tonight is the final decision that after two years of work here by our committees, including this one on the regional solicitation, new funding program called Carbon Reduction, which we talked about, I guess, on 2 occasions this fall, and then the Highway Safety Improvement Program. So we have them all in one PowerPoint, and I want to give Mr. Dugan a chance to kind of add some tab comments as we go through each of these here. So the first one is concurrence. So tab, in this case, is making the selection on the projects, and we're asking the Transportation Committee and the full council to concur with that selection. On 11/16 here, a couple weeks ago, tab selected what we called scenario B1, or option B1, bicycle pedestrian heavy. And shown as pink in your file packet on the tables, the projects. And this responds to the high application count we received for these types of projects, as well as the public survey that we did over the course of the summer and early fall that showed a preference to funding more of these types of projects. And you can see the dollar amounts here, and we had in the normal, I call regional solicitation, we had just over 300 million, 307 million available. And you can see the numbers on how that was split up between the different modal categories. One thing we wanted to do this year is to show what you receive for this $300+ million from on a regional standpoint. So we documented things like equity bonus projects. These were projects that scored high on the equity side, safety, what projects scored the best for safety, and what we got as in a totality for especially the roadway projects where we could monetize that safety benefit. So over $400 million of crash reduction monetized benefit there. Almost 500 intersections improved and those have to be ADA compliant. So that was one thing we talked about the tab level, about getting more in compliance as a region. And then 55 cities or townships with some level of investment, which is quite remarkable across the region, all 7 counties, and 32 different cities or counties or agencies were funded through this process. One thing Councilmember Fredson did ask about how many extra projects did we get with the new federal money, IIJA, that came in. So we went from roughly $200 million to $300 million this cycle. That allowed us to fund about 33 extra projects. So we went from 44 projects to 77 projects because of the money. So a lot more projects are being constructed with this new federal money coming in. And then the next action item is carbon reduction, and that could be up to another 14 projects on top of that. So the action again is that the Met Council concur with the Transportation Advisory Board's action to fund 77 projects selected through the regional solicitation process and include these projects in the draft 24 through 27 Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. And Mr. Dugan, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you, Steve. Mr. Carlson, I apologize, I did not address you in my introduction, so.
No worries.
And Mr. Koister as well. The overarching theme that came from the approval of the tab, by the tab, was there were 2 scenarios, and both were highly regarded and pretty close to each other. And so I think everyone recognized that no matter what scenario was approved, it would be good for the region. And I will say that comment typified many of the remarks during the discussion of the regional solicitation. What is best for the region as opposed to parochial needs that may be filled by local government or the like. The IIJA money, I guess the one thing I did learn, we got an extra $100 million and it still wasn't enough. So, it's always guns and butter. Steve, what kind of remarks, I don't want to go on and on, what kind of?
Yeah, we had quite a long, robust conversation. I think a lot of those conversations are going to continue on, both in the regional solicitation, but then also as we update the long-range plan, the TPP. I imagine a lot of those same kind of comments and will continue. So it's really more to come on many of those fronts.
Yes, and particularly the what we call the midpoint, determining roadways, transit, bike ped, bicycle and pedestrian. That is always a dynamic process. It's reviewed and will be reviewed this year. I think there was also a consensus that we may want to limit the number of scenarios that we have to present to TAB, because at one point there were a lot of them, and I think the time and effort put on staff by that was probably undue. Sometimes it was like being in the Caribou waiting line. I want this temperature, that, as many things as, well, what about this? What about that? It just got a little bit, in my opinion, but probably unnecessary. The good news, there's a lot of good news. Strategic capacity get funded. Every jurisdiction, every county was funded, and the tables in here are just excellent in terms of what, a county is broken down by population, what they've been funded over the last, 2014 to 2020, showing that equitable distribution of funds. And there certainly was a lot of support to address many of the needs in the bicycle pedestrian area. With 100, how many applications were there in the bicycle pedestrian? What,
69, 69, yeah.
169 or
Oh,
60?
69.
69. And I think about 50% of them got filled. So that was a real boost to many of those folks who wanted to see that. And of course, some of the suburban counties certainly are looking at, roadways, and because of the lack of transit options. And Councilmember Sterner, his district received a very good project in Apple Valley for the Skyway across the Highway 77. Steve, what else can I add?
Nope, I think it's good. We're trying to distill us
Yeah.
about 5 hours. Vice Chair Chambliss was there too
Yes,
for
yes, right,
for
yes.
about 5 hours here into a short amount of time, but
Yeah.
happy to go into more details on any piece of it if people want to, but.
And to Councilmember Chambliss, who was gracious enough to attend for me. I appreciate it
Yes.
very much. You did a wonderful job. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree that there was a great deal of commenting, and the different options were not that different from each other, so that made the decision process much easier. Having that carbon reduction funding, a very positive thing, and I got feedback on that as well, and I think the proposals that are presented today look really good. We have an opportunity to extend a trail in Anoka, which I think is going to be great, and using that carbon reduction funding earlier than later being a good option to me as well. So,
If I may, Chair, following on the Vice Chair's comments, you reminded me that the carbon reduction funds is approximately $41 million over 5 years, so $8 million a year. And waiting MnDOT's guidance on how to use that money, TAB decided to only use 2 years, so $16 million. However, there was a tie in 2 projects, and the commissioner from Scott County suggested taking an additional $5.5 million out of the third year, $8 million, to provide for Three Rivers Park District trail project. It has been traditional at the TAB that if 2 projects tie, something is tried to work out to fund both of them. And I think that also goes to the ethos of collaboration that TAB has, that trying to make sure that the region and everyone in the region is taken care of, and not just, my side.
And thank you for your comments, and that will be actually our next. We'll get into a little more
Right.
detail on that. So,
Yes.
So just back to the general regional solicitation and see if anyone had any additional questions
Wanted to
or
steal your
comments.
thunder, that's all.
All right. I just wanted to say thank you to all of our staff, Steve, Charles, lots of people, lots of other technical committees, people who have been working on this for a very long time. It is a big deal, and it's a lot of good projects and good funding coming into the region. And yeah, I cannot thank you all enough for making it, distilling it down so we can understand it as well, but also really taking the time to look at it from a lot of different angles, because I think the region as a whole was represented very well. So thank you.
Hundreds of hours, hundreds.
Yes, exactly. With that, I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-319.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Pacheco. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back to Steve to talk some more about the carbon reduction funding.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members, and thank you too for all your work on regional solicitation. Over a lot of subcommittees and other things that you're involved with. So, this is as we talked about 2 months ago here. The carbon reduction is a new federal source that came through the IIJA, and so it has a little different approval process that's not outlined in the MOU that the council has with MnDOT about who selects the project. So, because it's a new funding source, we asked our TAB to make a recommendation to the full council, and the council will actually select the projects on that versus concur. So it's slightly different, but as a new funding source, the council in this case is making the decision on what projects to select. As Mr. Dugan had mentioned, we have $41 million about $8 million per year. We're making the assumption that this funding source will continue beyond 2027, but showing that at the moment. Again, the purpose is to fund projects in the transportation sector that reduce CO2 emissions, and there's a wide variety of projects that are eligible for that. At the November TAB meeting, again, when we came to you last time, we talked about using the first 2 years, 2023 and 2024, so $8 million a year, $16 million. At the TAB meeting, as Mr. Dugan mentioned, there was a tied project. So again, these projects are scored out of 1,100 points. And we had 2 projects in the trails category that were tied the exact same score out of 1,100 points. And TAB made the suggestion, recommendation that we should go into the next year, 2025, and fund that tied project that was $5.5 million. That was a Three Rivers Park District trail. That would be shown as number 2. So again, let's maybe just walk through the options and then what the proposed action is. So option number 1 is to just use the first 2 years of the money, 23 and 24. That would fund an additional 11 projects. The TAB recommendation is shown as number 2. That would fund that tied project, that Three Rivers Park District trail, dipping into the 2025 funds, about 2/3 of it. But then after that TAB recommendation took place, we also took a look at it and said, well, if you're going to use 2/3 of the money, what could you get by just using all of that 2025 allocation? If you're left with 1/3 of the allocation, a couple $1 million, and you have to come up with a new decision-making process, and really not that much time for a capital project out in 2025. What could you do? And so we looked at the list and the next projects on the list that would equate to roughly another $2.5 million. And so you could fund that Three Rivers Park District project, and the next project would be a City of Anoka trail project, and then lastly, a City of Victoria and Carver County pedestrian overpass over Highway 5. So with those 3 projects, you could use the 2025 funds in its entirety and still preserve 26, 27, and beyond for other decision-making. And we think that would give us time for MnDOT to go through their carbon reduction strategy that's due at the end of 2023, roughly in a year from now, and some other council efforts to take place to make sure that going through the solicitation or funding bike ped or some other process, that there'd still be time to really dive into those details. So that's what we're showing as the preferred motion at the top of the screen, that the Met Council award 3 years, 23, 24, and 25 carbon reduction funds to the 14 bicycle pedestrian projects as part of the 2022 regional solicitation. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you and others.
Great, thank you, Steve. Just want to note too that there was a letter attached to the business item from Three Rivers Parks. I don't know if Jonathan is here in attendance, so if there's any questions, he's more than happy, I'm sure, to step up. But obviously, this project, especially with some of the other funding that got through this STIP, looks like it could be a very good asset to the region as well. So with that, I'd open it up to see if anyone had any questions or comments on this. Councilmember Fredson.
Thank you, Chair. Did TAB have a conversation about whether or not to support the third option? Or was that really not on the table at the meeting? Was it more about just, look, let's make sure we fund both of these tied projects?
So I did watch TAB, I wasn't there, but I will, I'll comment and then I'll turn it over to Charles probably. At the meeting, they only talked about the Bryant Park one. It was when we went back and looked and said, okay, it makes almost more sense to, if we're gonna spend that much of the 2025 round, what are the next 2 projects? And those were the 2 projects. I can't speak really on behalf of TAB, but I think that, they would, it really kind of goes in alignment with what they're thinking, and they're 2 good projects in different areas of the region. But Charles?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Councilmember Fredson, I believe that the Victoria project was included in the midpoint scenario for TAB in some of these options. So there was some interest to add it. That motion didn't prevail at TAB. It was really late in the meeting at that point. I think it was vote. We wanted to address the tie, and that's it. It was really only after that we said, if we're looking at 2025 funds, there's good projects here. Why don't we just allocate? Why don't we just suggest that the council select projects for all all of the 2025 year funds.
Correct, and this is a unique, like we talked about with the carbon funds, it's a little bit different where the council is actually awarding the funds rather than concurring with TAB. But we'll definitely, have all the communications with TAB as well. So, Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, and I just like the fact that, we're incorporating what was discussed by TAB, but then also adding a little bit more to it. So I think that's why I like option 3 as well. So I would go with the recommended option number 3.
Councilmember Sterner.
I was thank you, Chair. My question would be, what were the points on the 13th and 14th project? So if those two that tied were 1,100 points, what was the 13th and 14th project in points?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members. I'd have to look, they were in 2 separate categories. One of them was the next multi-use trail facility, and the Victoria one was in the pedestrian facilities category, so
Just a word of caution while he looks. It's challenging to compare points between categories because they submit based off of different requirements. So, yeah.
I'm looking at it here, Madam Chair, and the Rum River Trail in the multi-use trail category, just 2 points less than those 2 tied projects. So very, very close in that category.
All right.
Chair,
Again.
if I may add to the council, add in a comment to Councilmember Fredson's question. I think there's no question that TAB would support number 3. And I say that because TAB is always looking at a way to make the region better. And if there's a little extra money, they would go for it. And I think that was what made the discussion at TAB fruitful was that the 2 scenarios were so close. It was just a matter of just a little different emphasis and an acknowledgement, I think, a consensus, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Charles or Steve, that, let's fund as many of these. We've got a lot of bike ped applications, haven't had as many in the past. Let's try to catch them up and move on for the next one. Thank you.
All right, any additional questions, comments? All right, then I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-320, which, to be clear, is option 3 of the.
Make a motion to approve that item with using the option 3.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember, motion by Councilmember Sterner, second by Councilmember Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. One last item here, and this is, we're going back to concurrence, and this one, so this is concurrence on the Highway Safety Improvement Program. This is a program that's run by MnDOT, but because it is federal funds, and those federal funds are shown in our Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, we do send those through our committee structure for them to weigh in on that. So the proposed action is that the Met Council concur with the Transportation Advisory Board action to fund 38 projects through the Highway Safety Improvement Program and inclusion of all urbanized area projects in the draft TIP. And again, we did want to make the note that this was another funding area that received a large increase in funding. We're showing an additional 19 projects, so we doubled the number of safety projects that are going to be funded and built throughout the region. So I think that's really a great story. And really projects all across the region, not just highway projects. There's also bicycle pedestrian projects involved with our transit system and access to those that are part of this list, if you kind of look down through the 38 projects. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Any questions or comments from council members? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, I just, being involved in various transportation projects and involved with community engagement, what I've heard time and time again from residents is the importance of safety. And seeing that we're getting broad support for safety improvement, I think this is just, a great opportunity to meet their needs.
If I may, Madam Chair, the tab or summary reports that you received prior to this meeting, after the meeting, if you might want to look again for HSIP, number 2, where the statistics about serious fatalities and serious injuries are brought forth. We've done some improvements, but there's a long way to go. There's just a real long way to go, and so the opportunity to fund more projects is certainly, I think in TAB, well, I know in TAB's opinion is for the benefit of the region, and you'll notice that all safe routes to school were funded, and I think 90% of the pedestrian facilities were funded, which reflects TAB's concurrence, if you will. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Any final questions or comments? I just want to extend my thanks to Mr. Degan and Councilmember Chambliss. It's helpful to get some of the feedback from the room that day, so we appreciate that. With that, entertain a motion to approve business item 2022-321.
I'd make a motion to approve the item.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Fredson. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay, and the motion carries. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe one thing to note, when we bring this to the council, we are going to have maps by council district that show all of these projects, all the different sources with the names, so that I think that would be a good opportunity to go back to our districts and show some of the projects, really a high number of projects that are being funded within each district. So.
That's great. Thank you. It's very helpful for us, actually. Yeah, very much appreciated. With that, that concludes our business for the evening. Going through the list, I'm going to recommend that the only one item actually go on consent, and that is the re-ratification of emergency declaration, unless anybody disagrees. Fortunately, you'll get to hear me talk a lot, but we had a lot of very important business tonight. So,
Madam Chair, may I make one final comment? If you'd ever like to see an example of a role model for diplomatic eloquence and collaboration, please go onto the TAB meeting and see Madam Vice Chair Chambliss's remarks. If we had only followed her, I'll leave it at that.
all right, so now we are on to information. So our first information item is the congestion management process, and we have Dave Burns here to present. This is only consent.
Good afternoon, evening, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm Dave Burns with MTS Planning. I'm a planning analyst and the project manager for the Twin Cities Congestion Analysis Handbook. I will just kind of briefly talk about the handbook and then turn it over to Tim Burkhart with Alliant Engineering, who was the project manager for Alliant. So really, for the CMP policies and procedures document or congestion analysis handbook feeds off the CMP policies and procedures document, which we completed in 2020 and started in 2018. It lists a number of strategies, and this serves as kind of a how-to guide to allow our jurisdictions, our cities, our counties within the region to kind of have a uniform way of assessing congestion and looking at strategies and tiers of strategies within the region. And with that, I would be happy to have Tim talk about it because he did some fantastic work for us.
All right, thank you, Dave. Chair Barber and committee. I will take a few minutes and go through the highlights, and then you can ask questions if you would like, and otherwise we can move on. So we'll go through kind of why we did the handbook beyond what Dave said, what's in it, show you a few sample pages, and then talk about what's next. So as Dave indicated, this is really to provide guidance to the agencies in the region to assess congestion on a transportation corridor and try to bring that to a more unified process consistent across the region, in particular when proposals show up at the council or elsewhere, so we're coming from the same perspective. And I will show how that's done in a minute. Also wanted this handbook to anticipate that congestion would be addressed through multimodal strategies and those that would be consistent with the congestion management process and the TPP. Also building in understanding of corridor communities and people, not just the infrastructure.
and providing a link to funding in terms of how we think about what the problems are in a corridor, so they match, say, with what's in the regional solicitation and those priorities. Approach similar, but we didn't want to create another big thing to follow, so it's a simple guidebook using only selected data, the data we felt was most important to understand congestion. Uses the travel time index from the council's dashboard to understand if a corridor is or isn't congested. And again, bringing in the lived experience and specifically asking handbook users to not just report that, but interpret like the so what. What does this mean when we think about the corridor and its communities? As Dave mentioned, we do ask the users to screen for potential strategies to address congestion, and I'll show what that looks like. We tried this out on 3 different corridors around the region to sort of test it for different geographies and locations. And then we assume it will be a living document as time goes on. So there are 4 steps. I will go through these quickly. 4 steps that a user would follow to apply the handbook. So first, as I mentioned, is the question, is this corridor that I'm interested in congested, possibly congested or not congested? And the metric we're using is this travel time index, which is available through the council's congestion dashboard. We have suggested some tiers here, sort of quantitative that could be adjusted over time, but that's the starting point for congested, possibly, or not congested. Idea being, if a corridor is not congested, you probably wouldn't proceed down this road. You certainly could, but start with that before you dive into the details. Step 2 is really the guts of the handbook, and you'll see 3 buckets of information we ask users to collect and analyze. You'll notice the third one is transportation features, sort of services and infrastructure, and the first 2 are people, inequity, and land use. Again, emphasizing sort of context and people. There's lots of bullets on the page here. A lot of these, there's an easy lookup for the user. It's not a long, detailed analysis. A lot of this information is available on existing GIS or other data, so you can sort of understand, get a snapshot fairly quickly to answer these questions. So I won't go through all of these. If you have questions about individual data points and what we're up to, feel free to come back to that. Well, I will say each one of these results in a map and some brief text, which I'll show an example of. So after pulling the information, analyzing it, we asked for a summary, not a long report, but what we call a corridor narrative. Here's the map. Here's the implications of what it means in a short few sentences. We do provide an option, the second bubble there, for if you've already studied the corridor to death, yes, let's bring that information in. This process is a little bit different in its approach, but we didn't want to ignore what might be happening concurrently or previously. Third bullet, public involvement. We don't ask users to do public involvement. This is sort of a back of the envelope technical study. If it's been done, that's important, and it probably will be done going forward, especially to validate things like information on understanding the corridor community. So it is a piece of this, but it's not, we don't prescribe what to be done. And then conclusion, we ask for a problem statement, concise, as I say, concise evidence, summarize the evidence of the congestion problem. We have a congestion issue, here's the evidence stating that, to sort of provide a solid place for going forward to say, okay, now what should we do about it? Which brings us to step 4. This process doesn't dictate how you address the congestion problem or guide you through if this, then this, then this, then this, but it does ask the user to go through the long list of congestion management strategies that's already in the CMP, congestion management process. There's 70-some strategies in there. We did reorganize them into the 5 categories you see at the left of the screen, which really follow regional solicitation or transportation policy plan sort of groupings, and ask users to go in that order. That is, consider transportation demand management first, traffic management technology, smart mobility, easy pass if it's applicable, and then lastly, capacity enhancements, roadway widening, if you will. So what we ask people to do is also pretty simple. There's a lot of strategies, but we say, hey, you've done the assessments, go through with each strategy and just give it a rating. Ability to address the problem you've identified. Low, medium, high, NA. Give us some notes and then summarize that by category. So the idea is to set you up for the next phase. We've considered the information, have some sense of what we want to do. And that, again, opens up the opportunity for discussion against sort of regional policy. Now, did I do that? I did that. Okay. A few pages to just show you what it looks like inside if you haven't had a chance to flip through it all. For each piece of information, we have a one-page, what I call instruction sheet. Why we're asking you to collect this information, how to get it, where to get it, and then what to do with it. Try to keep it fairly simple, understanding that the users might be, you know, a larger city or county that has lots of staff and planners and engineers, or a smaller jurisdiction that has, you know, one person doing all that stuff potentially. So instruction sheets, some sample of the narrative. Again, this is not really prescriptive, but hey, here's what it could look like so you don't get carried away. And as I mentioned, the implications. Tell us what you found and how it matters for your community or for this corridor, why it matters. We have lots of example maps for the different corridors and the different, I think it's 19 different data points, each of which can correspond to a map. We did nice versions of these. Certainly somebody could print something out and mark it up with a Sharpie and a highlighter if they wanted and make a lot of the same points. And then this is just a snapshot of what that strategy screening tool looks like. There's an Excel sheet with some coding in it, so as you select your rating for each strategy, it lights up to see where the low, medium, and high ratings are. We do ask you to put a note in there to say why you came up with that conclusion, and you might not have enough information at this point to address some of them. But it just tries to be explicit. Somebody else might disagree with what the user says, but it puts it all out there. Then on the right-hand side, we do ask you to summarize each of those 5 categories. You know, how likely are travel demand management strategies to address the issues that you identified and why? So that's most of the content from here. We're doing these presentations to the various committees, and next year the council intends to do some more testing of the handbook with communities that express interest, both to sort of get the ball rolling and also see if there's some refinements that are indicated based on that, and then continue to update as we go along. Miss anything?
No, I think that's great. Just touching upon that last part, we will be releasing an RFP in early 2023, where we'll be kind of testing some of these strategies and working directly with communities to make sure that they're applicable to all types of corridors, all types of scenarios. And of course, as Tim mentioned, it's a living document, so it'll be updated accordingly based upon that sort of feedback. So this is a first draft. It's, you know, it's complete, but always good to have it tested out and make sure that it actually works for all the communities within our region. And yeah, happy to take any questions on this.
Very good. Any questions? Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, this looks like a really good approach in addressing congestion. I do have a question about how we're looking at transit dependence now and into the future when we've expanded our transportation network in areas that are transit dependent and they have good transportation. How will we change our formula? Looking at that and being a person living in the suburbs where, you know, people may go that extra mile to get a car because they don't have access to good transportation. So we're investing if we continue to invest in areas that have a lot of transportation and we ignore the areas that don't, or people who may be just kind of stranded and not really utilizing all the resources where they live simply because there is not adequate public transportation. So, and I know that's not the focus of this but proposal for congestion, but I think it might be something that we want to look at into the future when we build out all of our LRT and BRT. How are we going to address those other areas? Just wanted to bring that up.
I can shed a little bit of light on that in terms of what we were thinking in the handbook. I went back to this slide, which I went past quickly to list all the things for data we're pulling. So asking users to identify full information on transit dependence today. That's in the first column. Polling information on the transit market area, how likely is this area well served or likely to be served in terms of Metro Transit's plans, and then sort of what's the current transit service or infrastructure. So I don't know if this answers your question. My thought is that the three of those will let us know, gee, it's low transit dependence or high transit dependence, not well served either in terms of where it is, how it ranks in the market area based on the other indicators, how likely it will be in the future. Does that get at what you're asking, or is that?
Chair, yeah, I think it gets at what I'm asking, but I'm not sure it's clearly defined, especially throughout our transit plans, in terms of how we are addressing those areas that where you have difficulty getting around in a city because we don't have the demand, but the need is still there.
That is, Madam Chair and Vice Chair, that's a really good question, really good insight. Something we can certainly look to improve upon in the future. I'm on the spot. I'm trying to think of a good answer, but
Yeah, and I'm not really necessarily looking for an answer, but I just think it's something to kind of consider, because sometimes we have these, set formulas and they make a whole lot of sense and they're good, but where are the gaps and how are we addressing those and having more clarity on that?
If I may, I think some of the, you heard General Manager Koistra mention Network Now coming in and how we're looking at, part of that is looking at how people travel, even within their communities. Is travel going to change? Those things that I don't think we all completely know yet. So your comments are kind of well taken in the right audience. I think that, we're all trying to figure out how to wrestle with some of those exact conversations as we try to build back some of our service and look at our overall transportation systems. Councilmember Fredson.
One comment I just wanted to make was, that if I understand right, this travel time index reflects like the present, right, as opposed to based on forecasts for the future. And it'd be really interesting to have a tool or a score that would somehow anticipate future travel time index score, just where there is massive sort of development or growth, and just specific to my district. I mean, if you look at the intersection at Cleveland and Ford, where you have the Ford site redevelopment happening, and my assumption is that today that might show up as possibly congested or not congested, but in a matter of years it would be congested. I think you could say the same about the development of Allianz Field or the Vikings practice facility. So just something to consider building into the tool in the future.
Thank you. I'm going to actually follow on to your comments kind of quickly. I'm glad you're going to go out to throughout the region, because I can look and say I have the same sorts of examples in my district, which is more suburban than Councilmember Fredson's, where Highway 169 is a parking lot at 5 o'clock. So is that congestion to me, or is it driving on Highway 212 where there's high volumes of freight traffic and things like that? Because I think you'll find that what that what congestion it feels to communities is different throughout the region. And so I'm really glad you're going to go out and talk to some people about how this tool will get used and kind of built into things. I like the idea of having a measure that you can track and change over time, or really see if there's things that might improve it. But my guess is you're going to get a wide variety of feedback as you go out and socialize this. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. That's absolutely true. And yeah, this is very context dependent, and congestion is to a pretty significant extent subjective. So these are not hard and fast sort of tiers of congestion on TTI. You can certainly have a problem and be under a TTI of 1.0 and still consider some of the consider some of the strategies that we have incorporated within the tool.
Yeah. And engineering me is liking that you're taking this to something that's more quantifiable, that you can measure over time, versus, because there is an element of feeling, I think, when you start talking things like congestion. Right. Additional questions or comments, council members? All right, thank you very much. We look forward to hearing more.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're on to our last information item, which is the semi-annual FTA DBE report to FTA. We have Ashante Payne here. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Council Committee members. Shanti Payne, Assistant Director, Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. As you may be aware, one of the requirements of continued receipt of federal funds through the Federal Transit Authority and USDOT is that we report on a semi-annual basis the outcomes and results of the Council's administration of the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. And we also, the results are also measured against our annual 3-year goal, which is currently we're in the 2021 through 2023 period with a goal of 14%. I will also point out that we are due to submit our 2024 to 2026 proposed DBE goal August of 2023. And historically, the council has performed that task in-house. We will be seeking a third party to conduct that analysis and propose the next triennial goal period for us. And as you'll see, we definitely have good news to report in terms of outcomes of our federal DB program. If you recall, for the first half of the federal fiscal year, we had 20.9%. During this second half period that we're reporting on, we achieved 17.72%. And with a final federal fiscal year end achievement of 18.22% DBE participation against a 14% goal. One of the things I'd like to point out, 46 of the DBE contracts went to women-owned firms. 12 of those contracts went to firms owned by men, and there were a total of 58 contracts that were awarded to DBE firms in this second half period. This slide just is really based on feedback and questions that we've received in the past from council members of how are the firms in our DB directory, what is that makeup by gender and ethnicity? And this just kind of shows what that makeup is, and then what each group, how many contracts they were awarded out of those 58 contracts. So some of the major the major contracts that were awarded in this second half period, the Gold Line civil construction contract, that was $198 million, and it had a DBE commitment of 17.11%. So that's 82% of that achievement right there. And then also the Gold Line construction contract also, which had a DB commitment of 16%. Some of the kind of highlights, we had 2 DB firms that were awarded prime contracts, one Asian Pacific American male and one Asian Pacific American female firm. And each of those firms received 2 contracts, prime contracts. Also, 2 Hispanic American-owned firms were awarded contracts, one male and one woman-owned firm. And then we had 3 Native American firms that were awarded contracts during the reporting period, where we had none last year. What we would kind of attribute some of the improvements this year as opposed to last year, really focused in with the further development of our engagement and development unit in OEEO, the Office of Equity and Equal Opportunity. We did some targeted outreach, conducted both individual and group meet and greets with business units, continued operation of our mentor protege program, where we partner DBs with larger, longer established firms to work on specific aspects of their business. We made some changes and improvements to the contract initiation and goal setting processes. And then we created also a new data team as well, and partnered with Human Resources and the Office of Procurement on some initiatives through the Advancing Equity Grant. This last slide really shows kind of in comparison, or actually second to last slide, from 2021 to 2022. We did meet our goal last year in 2021, barely, 14.02%. And from that, there were $8.2 million awarded to DBEs of the $59 million in awarded contracts. In 2022, we had $52.5 million awarded to DBEs of the $248 million awarded contracts for 18.22%. So significant improvement from last year. This last slide really, I think, highlights, some of the work that's been going on in the collaborative efforts with the business units and some of our other partners, like the Office of Procurement. If you look in 2021, we did not have any dollars awarded to Black Americans or Hispanic American firms, women-owned firms. And that was different in 2022. And you just also see in 2022, there's just a more equitable distribution across all of the ethnic and racial categories in terms of awarded dollars. So that is something that we really wanted to highlight. I would just say that that's not the norm, even in our region or nationally, to have this kind of distribution. So that is definitely something good to see. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ashanti. Questions, comments from council members? Councilmember Stern.
Yeah, I just had kind of a question. I'm looking at the non-minority women, and where it's like 37 million out of the 52 million. So at what point would that category not qualify for DBEs, or how does the other, women and other diversity, catch up to those numbers? It seems like maybe we're putting a lot of efforts in that one, or maybe they're, know the one that we're maybe not doing as, we need maybe more training, like you mentioned earlier, with different groups. So I'm just kind of wondering when does that category maybe leave this as not being a DBE goal here?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Sterner, that's an excellent question. I would say the best way to answer that question is from a compliance standpoint. There is no, searching for the right word, there is no consideration of not establishing a goal. You often hear people say a DBE is a DBE is a DBE. However, from an equity standpoint, it is certainly something that we pay attention to and that we direct our efforts to address. So one of the things that we did, and I think that's why we have seen some improvements in terms of better distribution of that. Historically, it's usually around 90%, 85 to 90% are awarded to those firms. I would say that's not the case here, although it's significant. And then we did some outreach events specifically for businesses owned by women of color, because that was, if you look at 2021, that was a glaring gap in our reporting process. So, so long story short, from a compliance and legal kind of standpoint, there is no, we'll just set DBE goals, but we definitely look beyond just compliance and regulation into equity.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? Councilmember Chambliss?
Thank you. I've been noticing as we start improving, I've been noticing as we've been receiving requests to approve the dollars for contracts that, you know, a lot of those proposals and the results afterwards are showing more organizations meeting the DBE goal, so that is good. I was waiting for this moment to kind of see what it all flushes out, because I've definitely seen an improvement. I mean, it's obviously clear, as Councilmember Sterner said, we've got a long way to go still, even outside of the Met Council, as you mentioned. But having a strategy and doing that targeted outreach and understanding where the needs are is a good start. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to us building upon this and doing even more, and potentially becoming a national model for how to better achieve the strategic DBE goals. May not necessarily be the compliance goals, but when you see such big gaps and you see that meeting the compliance goals are not really fulfilling that equity gap, then I think focusing on that strategy and the equity goal is a good place for us to continue to go. So thank you to your team for the good work and being strategic and making some results. Yeah, we do have a long way to go. It's frustrating, of course, to see these big gaps, but being aware of why they are that way and what needs to be done to kind of scale up some of the organizations, getting them mentors, getting them tied into bigger organizations that they can learn from and build on is good. So thank you for your work, you and your team.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilmember Chambliss. Yes, that is the challenge. I mean, when you kind of, you can't just say, oh, yes, this is the best we've done. The challenge is now, how do we improve upon and keep getting better? Because as we all know, we have a long way to go. And yes, our goal is to be a leader in this space, and for not only others in this region, but across the country.
Additional questions, comments? And just a final comment then from me, I'm going to echo kind of what you've already been hearing, but I mean, these numbers are really impressive. It's not the perfect story, but boy, have we made some strides. Like, we're headed the right direction. You can tell it's been a concerted effort with great intent, focused on really trying to make a difference. And I think you're starting to see some of those reflected in these numbers. And so thank you so much for bringing it. It's very impressive. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. All right, that's the end of our business. Councilmember Pacheco?
I'm not sure this is the right time or not, but I just have a question, and that is that I attended the equity committee with Councilmember Sterner and a few others there, and we were looking at the bylaws and some other items, and I was bringing the council member report, in which case outlining what we shall make our report on what we're working on and what's going on, but. I asked if they had been to this facility and toured here, or if we had any meetings that were held here for the equity committee. And I was thinking of that because there's so much that we're doing over this side, especially in this neighborhood or coming off there. And if we could, if it's possible in the future to have our equity committee here, and as well as maybe have a presentation on what we're doing on like the Blue Line extension, and the displacement work we're doing. Because we have some great advocates on the equity committee, but if we wait till we absolutely need them, they won't be prepared.
That's a great idea, and I think we did early on, but it was early on, like, so it's been quite some time, and the facility's changed dramatically, so whether it's in this space, there's also another great meeting space up above that we could use if we need more room. So, yeah, we can definitely get that arranged and make sure we have some presenters here. So, yeah, perfect.
Little known fact, the EX retreat, pre-COVID retreat was upstairs.
Yeah. Very full space. All right, any additional questions, comments? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Sterner, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Chambliss, all in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.